Yo, what's poppin' guys, Sizzyl here, and today I'll be reviewing Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. This is one of the first games I've ever played, so it holds a special place in my heart. In my opinion, Pokemon Emerald is still one of, if not the best games in the entire Pokemon series, and it released all the way back in 2004, with its predecessors Pokemon Sapphire and Ruby coming out all the way back in 2002. First off, within the 135 new Pokemon added, this generation introduced some of the coolest Pokemon designs to date. The starters in this game were some of the best the series has ever seen, and Mudkip's line in particular has spawned its own cult following and is very well loved by the fanbase as a whole. Gardevoir and Flygon's lines are also really solid contenders for great designs, and Salamence and Metagross are some of the coolest designs I think the series has ever had. And the crazy amount of legendaries that were introduced in this generation are just insane. First off, you have the cover trios of Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza, along with the Lati twins, the Regis, Deoxys, and Jirachi. There are obviously other well-loved designs for Pokemon such as Absol, loved by Absolblog's Pokemon, Tropius, loved by Absalom27, and Snorunt, loved by yours truly. On top of this, it had a god-tier HM sleeve in the form of Zigzagoon, and brought back many of the most loved Pokemon designs from the first two generations such as Magnemite, Geodude, and Magikarp. Overall, this game had a ton of solid designs and variety of Pokemon to use around the region. This game also had numerous additions to the series, many of which just stayed for generations to come. First off, it added contests, which some people might care for, but honestly it's just a neat side game mode that you can play to give your Pokemon medals, which this game also added to your Pokemon. And there was a complete berry overhaul, which made them much more accessible and made them regrowable, so you could have stuff like citrus berries on more of your Pokemon. And it also had a very small change to how Burn, Leech Seed, and Poison work, which made it so they were affected you at the end of every turn, rather than when you were attacked by the enemy Pokemon, which let you win a couple more battles and take a lot less extra annoying damage while processing through the game. There was also a very small mechanic with tides in a place called Shoal Cave, and depending on the time of day, you could access different areas in the cave, which honestly is a neat little feature, but I didn't even know this existed until I wrote this script, which just shows how many small pieces of content this game randomly has to offer. And this game also introduced a thing called secret bases, which allowed you to make a nice little customizable home in a couple different locations around the map, such as small holes in the wall, bushes, and trees, with the use of the new TM43 hidden power in the overworld. In total, there were 75 places to make these sorts of bases on the map, and you could earn, find, or buy many different decorations to be used in your base around almost the entire map of Emerald. And honestly, it's one of the cooler side additions any Pokemon game has ever made that was just never reused. However, I personally didn't use these much, as their main use was after mixing records with a friend by using a Game Boy link cable, which I didn't have, with a friend who has another copy of the Gen 3 games and his own Game Boy, which I also didn't have at the time. And you could then battle an NPC representing that person once a day in your secret base, which gave you some money and experience just like any other trainer would. And I've only ever made a handful of bases, and they weren't really all that customized, as when I was a kid, I cared a lot more about just battling more and more Pokemon. Another really cool addition that Pokemon Emerald added were the legendary events. And while I never got to experience them as a kid, with the use of cheat codes, I've been able to experience how cool the events for Deoxys, Latias, the Regis, and Mew are. This was also the only way to get a legitimate shiny Mew other than the Gotta Catch 'Em All event in Thanksgiving of 2002, all the way until the release of Shiny Mew in Pokemon Go, which is coming out in a couple of months. But unfortunately, the Mew event in Emerald was exclusive to Japan, so there's a very small chance that anyone really experienced it legitimately. It can't be understated just how cool all of these events are and how much more special they feel than simply getting a gift Pokemon, which happens from Generation 6 onward. However, the events for the Reggie Trio were actually just an in-game secret using Braille, so if you don't want to use cheats, it is one of the only events of its kind to ever happen in Pokemon without needing activation from a real-life event. On top of this edition, one of the best additions that Pokemon Emerald had that I doubt will ever be removed from Pokemon is double battles. They were introduced in Pokemon Emerald and have remained a staple mechanic of the series ever since, as they're even used as the official battle format in VGC, which is Pokemon's own competitive tournament. And on top of this, Pokemon Emerald added 103 new moves, the weather, and Pokemon abilities to the game at the same time. And without all these changes, I highly doubt Pokemon would be as large and fun as it is today, as the addition of weather, abilities, and double battles added a lot of depth in Pokemon battles going forward. If these things weren't in the game, I probably wouldn't have had and continue to have so many Pokemon battles with friends and random people from around the world, as they'd be way too straightforward and would require next to no thought. However, the biggest and most memorable addition that I think Pokemon Emerald made was the Battle Frontier, which is exclusive to Pokemon Emerald. This area had the Battle Factory, Battle Arena, Battle Dome, Battle Pike, Battle Palace, Battle Pyramid, and Battle Tower, which was some of the best post-game that any Pokemon game has ever had to offer. Each of these places could lead to weeks worth of fun Pokemon battles to get the silver and gold symbols for each location, and were some of the fondest memories that most kids, including myself, have of playing Pokemon Emerald as a kid. This game also introduced a few new UI changes that have continued being used even to this day. It introduced having a full color palette in Pokemon, which made games look much cleaner and is why Generation 3 is the furthest back most people will play, excluding remakes such as Heart Gold and Soul Silver, of course, that also have full color palette. It also cleaned up the summary screen a bunch to make it look a lot nicer to view your Pokemon stats, medals, abilities, nature, typing, and more. And one of the coolest additions was an update to how you viewed the PC, which also got 10 extra spaces in each box, which allowed you to see a lot more info about the specific Pokemon in your PC, and has continued to function very similar to this game ever since. These are extremely underrated changes by most Pokemon fans, but they make playing Pokemon significantly more enjoyable, and is why I enjoy playing the Gen 1 and 2 remakes so much more than the original games. Overall, this game had a ton of new UI changes that it introduced, which helped make the game as memorable as it is. Now to talk about the region of Hoenn. This map had some of the most memorable locations in just about any Pokemon game. As you can see on screen, there were 29 locations in this game, excluding the various routes, many of which were extremely expansive, such as the Battle Frontier, which I've already talked about, and Lily Cove City, which is where you could use your event tickets to encounter both Mew and Deoxys, where you battle Team Aqua right before the end of the game, where you find a large convenience store they've had in every Pokemon game since Generation 1, and much more, without it even being one of the big 8 cities with gyms in them. I would go into a lot more detail about each location on the map, but if I did that, this video would probably be several hours long, so instead of that, I'll go on and talk about why this is one of my favorite maps to date, which would be just how free the map was. Even looking at the large overscale map on screen, you can see what I'm talking about. In the area around Sootopolis, the player could go all around the city, they could dive underneath its walls and enter the city, they could accidentally make their way to the Pokemon League, they could end up going to Sky Pillar, they might end up at the Battle Frontier, or if they miss all of that, they'll end up at Pacifilog Town. This layer of exploration even goes more into very specific routes and locations on the map, such as Route 119, which really doesn't need much explanation. I mean, just look at how many different patches and side areas the players could visit, or how many secret areas they could have their bases at. And on top of that, there's a small house, 3 berry growing locations, a bunch of hidden little patches of grass, a few tiles that are the only place to catch Phoebus in Generation 3, the Weather Institute, and the small house mentioned before that you can get healed at. All of this was included in just one small route, which is absolutely insane, and very few games or even specific routes have managed to beat or even match up with the sheer quantity of content found on this route. There was also a small little event called Mirage Island, where upon talking to a specific NPC by a window, there was a small chance that you could visit Mirage Island for a day, and was actually the only place to get a lychee berry, which boosts your attack when you're on low health, or twice if you have the ability Ripen, and is the only way to encounter a natural Wynot, but you could just simply breed a Wobbuffet with a Laxin Sense to get it instead, since this event is extremely unlikely, and this event happening once a day had a 1 in 65,536 chance of happening if you have one Pokemon in your party, but by having a full party, you can increase those chances to 1 in 10,923, which is still actually more rare than getting a shiny Pokemon. On top of that, there's a small place called Mirage Tower in the desert where you get the fossil for this game, which disappears permanently after you collect your fossil of choice. The problem is that this map has one huge downside, which is that it might allow for a little bit too much free movement in the main game. Even while I was replaying this game for my review, I was fine up until Lily Cove, and then it got so confusing that I legitimately had to look up online guides on how to progress. And apparently, after you make it to Lily Cove, you have to go all the way back to Mount Chimney, talk to a specific NPC sitting next to a rock, beat that NPC in the battle, which then opens a secret hideout for Team Magma. You need to beat all of the Team Magma grunts and the leader there. Then you need to go all the way to Meteor Falls to watch a little cutscene happen between both teams. You have to go all the way back to Lily Cove, enter Team Aqua's hideout, which was blocked by a submarine before unless you did everything else before this. Then you need to beat the double battle gym in the top right city to get your 7th badge. Talk to Steven in a tiny little hut randomly in the top left of that city, and dive under the water near the city, find a tiny cave under the water with a submarine by Pseutopolis, finally make it into Pseutopolis City, then go out of Pseutopolis City again, find Sky Pillar on a very hidden side path on the way to Paciflog Town, which is hard to find without a guide, talk to an NPC there, and then you can finally go back to Pseutopolis, watch Rayquaza split up a fight between Growl and Kyogre, and finally you're able to enter the 8th gym. Now, that specific portion of the game is the only place I had a lot of confusion with, but other people could have different problems with where to go, and the game is probably the least linear Pokemon game ever made. And clearly, while this map is extremely large and free, you can easily make the argument that it might be a little bit too large, but overall, it's part of why I like this game so much. Last but not least, this game had some phenomenal music. Pokemon games always have some great music, and this game is no exception. Each route, city, and special area has their own catchy tune, and I can honestly remember about 99% of the locations just from their music alone, as they do a great job of setting the atmosphere for each location. A large majority of the songs in this game are on my personal music playlist, as they're really great songs, and my personal favorites are the Sailing theme, Diving theme, Mount Pyre, and Route 113. Even my outro is a specific cutscene from Pseutopolis that I was talking about earlier, with music from Route 119. Overall, Pokemon Emerald is a phenomenal game and holds a very special place in my heart. I doubt there will ever be any game like it, and I think I'll rate this game a 94 out of 100, as it is a very good game and I have extremely fond memories of it. That being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.